ACT. ACT, act. As leaders, we know we have to act. We have got to do something. We just can't sit around thinking about things or feeling about things. We got to get into action. ACT also stands for ACT and cultural transformation. There's this wonderful connection between leadership and the culture. If we are the best as we can be as a leader, we will bring out the best in our culture. And as that culture brings out the best in itself, right? Everybody working together, tuned in, got each other's back. That also makes that leader even better. So there's a wonderful connection, and that's what we do here. And that's what we are about, executive coaches. Today, we've got this wonderful guest. It's a man that I've just gotten to know, but I have a lot of admiration for him. Dirk Van Der Vaart. Excuse me for messing that up. I apologize about that.
I still screw it up myself.
Okay. So we're in the same club. That's nice. I like that. So give us your 60-second elevator speech. Introduce yourself. Let the folks know who you are, what you're about.
Yeah, Rich and Maikel, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here and to share a couple minutes with your listeners. As we talk about today about how to instill a sense of duty and what a sense of duty really means, I just want to take a quick moment and recognize all those incredible men and women that have laid down their lives so that we can be free and have the opportunity to do things like this, have this discussion. And as we get into this Memorial Day, I just want to say thank you to all the families out there that have a loved one that paid that price. I'm deeply indebted to all of you, and God bless you for the sacrifice your families have made. So with that said, I've come from about 30 years. Boy, it's tough to hear myself say that. But 30 years in the defense and national security industry. I started out as a government guy, spent about 13 years in the intelligence community as a special operations officer in the CIA. And then after my government duty, transitioned into civilian life, doing mostly the same thing for large government contractors. And I came up through the business development and sales track, made my way into the executive ranks, and eventually got into the C-suite. I've been senior vice president, executive vice president, COO, and 3 times have served as president of a company. And my passion really is working with leaders in this industry, in the defense and national security, and writ large, the federal contracting industry. I think we're at a time where we really need to take a look at leadership and what leadership means in this industry. So appreciate this time to get together.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
That's great. We're so glad that you're here with us today, Dirk. Appreciate it. Rich, we're going to take a look at law number 35 here of John Matone's. Let's start walking down that road. Would you open that up for us?
Okay. Well, there are 50 laws of intelligent leadership, executive coaching, and law 35 is a very good one. That's what we're going to talk about today. But it states that true leaders are driven by a sense of service to a greater community, a sense of duty to something more significant than themselves. And that's a bit. You think that'd be obvious? You really think that'd be an obvious choice to make as a leader, but it's not. We are definitely living in an age of entitlement, an age where it's all what's in it for me. And that whole, if you're a CEO or in the C-suite, that whole rock star mentality versus what it is that you can do for those around you. And, so it's really leadership's about having a sense of duty to something greater than yourself. And that's where really we want to unpack and do a deep dive into that today.
All right. Dirk, let's talk about ego here. This what he's talking about here. Richard's really talking about people's egos and how they're important and all that kind of stuff. Give us a little bit deeper dive on that, would you please?
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic, and I think Rich hit the nail on the head. Starting out, you would think it's an obvious trait, but yet it's not. And there's something that if you read some of the scholarly material about this, some of the psychological studies that have been done, there is a concept called the paradox of power. And the paradox of power says that those traits that got you into a position of power, typically humility, servitude, altruism, sense of duty to something greater than yourself, those kinds of traits that propelled you into a position of power are usually the first things to disappear once you're in that position of power, right? And I'm guilty of it myself. I can remember, one of the first times that I really got promoted, my first foray into the C-suite. I found myself a year into it, realizing that I was pretty proud of myself and pretty pumped up, and thinking that I was this great guy that had done great things and that I really deserved to be where I was. And when things started to go wrong, the school of hard knocks kicked in, and I had to learn a hard lesson. But, what it really comes down to is, I think, a greater sense of self-awareness, and really understanding, being able to perceive yourself not just through your own eyes, but being able to step outside yourself and see, how do other people perceive me? What things am I saying and doing? How are my behaviors showing up in the workplace as a leader? And if you can unlock that, then you can really start to change the way you're perceived and the way you lead. And that really starts to lead then to that sense of connectedness to a purpose that's greater than yourself.
That's not always easy to do, is it? I mean, it's a hard thing to step away and just look at yourself objectively. So there's a lot of leaders, my experience has been, they think they are that person that is selfless, that is altruistic, right? That is not all caught up in themselves. They have this blind spot. They just don't see it. They don't get it. And the result of that is, when you talk to them about it, they're going, well, what are you talking about? I'm already that person. Why would I do that, right? We were talking about Rich. We ran into that kind of leader just yesterday. This person thought she was all that already, and it became a kind of an uncomfortable little thing as we were talking with her.
It did, but it was able to fix that and move on. But absolutely, I think there's, what Dirk said, there's a sense of, if I get to a certain position, I think there's a sense of pride that takes over, where, I've earned this. This is who I am. My skills, my talents, everything I've done up to now has put me here. And so therefore, I deserve this. And really, being in a leadership position is such an important role in other people's lives, not so much yours, but other people's lives. It's a privilege to be in a leadership position. How many of those individuals that you work with, that you can either adversely or positively affect their entire career path? Yeah. So it's very important to understand that if you're put in that position, you really need to step back and take a deep look in the mirror and maybe, alter your course. And that's not easy. It really isn't. That's not easy to look in that mirror sometimes. It's not easy to find out where your gaps are.
John Mattone made a very interesting observation that came out of one of the studies that was done out there. And I'd like you to talk a little bit more about it, Dirk. And this is this idea: the people at the C level often are the people who have the least emotional intelligence. They're the ones that don't have it.
Yeah. But
by contrast, those that do, they really outperform the other ones by far. What's your experience about that?
Yeah, we could probably do a whole week of podcasts just on that topic alone, right? There's a lot there. But yeah, really what both of you have hit on is that there is some hard work that needs to be done in order to get to that point of emotional intelligence, or as we like to say in our business, intelligent leadership, right? And it comes back to that concept of self-awareness, and that's not easy to do. It's very difficult to step outside oneself, and particularly in an executive context where you've got all these pressures ongoing on a daily basis, and we're so busy with being busy and the tyranny of the urgent, right? And you've got reports that are due literally, seems hour by hour, if not week by week, month, quarterly, annually, semi-annually, board meetings, people walking in your door all the time. So finding the headspace and time to really sit and do that work is very difficult. And I think I can speak for all three of us. That's why we do the work that we do. That's the value that an executive coach can bring to this equation, is you need somebody that will take you by the hand, that will walk shoulder to shoulder with you and guide you through that process of really unlocking that inner core, unlocking that inner map, and understanding, where do my thoughts come from? how are those thoughts influencing my emotions? My emotions then influence my behaviors, and behaviors are what people see, right? That's how I show up in the workplace. And so there's a lot of hard work to be done there. And again, it really requires oftentimes another person to stand there with you and help you through that. And then you can start to, connect to that sense of, wow, I'm not in this for me, but what really matters as a leader is how I mold, shape, inspire, and form the future leaders that are below me.
Yeah, that's a real interesting point that you're making there, Dirk. And that's this idea of, let's be honest, unless you're kind of a weird person, every one of us has those places inside of us where we go, yeah, and I'm not sure about that. I've got some doubts. I've got some worries. I've got some anxieties. I've got some things that I wonder about my leadership. I mean, there's always that kind of stuff. And so then we kind of push back, they push it down and say, well, I've got to be the person that's right, that's got it all together, that knows all the answers. And so there's this funny tension, am I really all that? Do I really have what it takes? And so, because this other part is always pushing against that, and having that coach come in and say, let's start sorting that out.
Yeah.
Let's start figuring a better way to work through that, to navigate that, so that you're not all tied up in that, but rather now you've got an outward focus about, who am I serving here? Who am I working with here? And again, that can be something that people think, or leaders think that they're doing, but they don't always necessarily have that kind of clear objectivity that they really required. So let's just talk. I'm going to talk about just a moment here for the leaders to say, how would you know if you're doing this? How would you know if you're really that person that's open, that doesn't always have to be right, that always doesn't have to have all the ideas are invented here, that doesn't have to be the one that, I've got to save face and all that kind of stuff. Let's take a look at this. If you're a person, if in a leadership position, when there are problems, but you are denying them, that's not a problem. We're not going to deal with that one. Or when people are attempting to engage you in a conversation, well, we really need to take a look at that. And you're just saying, yeah, well, we'll get around to that. We'll do that later. Or just saying, misdirecting. And these are all skills, survival skills that leaders get into pretty quickly. Says, yeah, I agree with you, and we're going to take care of that later on, but you really don't. And then when people confront you about it, saying, well, I thought we were going to talk about that. Well, that's not exactly what I said, or when I said that, this is really what I meant. And so get into parsing, you get into, yes, we're going to do that, but you don't tell the whole truth, because you're just in that place of so much stuff coming at you already. You don't know how to have the clear space in your head to actually get to it. And then sometimes you make somebody else responsible. Someone say, hey, I understand we're going to be taking this on. And they're talking to you as the leader. Said, well, why would they say that? And you had the conversation, right? You did. But now it's like, well, you're putting it back onto them. And then instead of answering questions, you say, well, why would you ask me that? Why would you talk about that? I mean, why would you go in there? Don't you think that's a little negative? Can't you be a little bit more positive about things? Or then the other one is like, there's something about you. I'm playing the role of the leader. You always have a problem. Feel there. I mean, we're all attempting to work together, bring it about, make things happen. And you've always got something to say. Maybe it's you. And these are all kinds of defensive things, passive aggressive things that leaders can get themselves in. They think that they're actually being beneficial to themselves, when in fact, if you take a look at the time, the energy that they're burning up with let's ask an honest question here, guys, and I'd like to have you discuss it. When things really need to be addressed, they really need to be confronted. By denying them, pushing them away, bypassing them, do things ever really get better? Let's hear Rich, and then I'd like to hear Dirk. Do they get better?
They do. I got to tell you, the biggest waste in any organization is people's time, energy, and talents. I hear a lot of leaders and companies, they give lip service to waste. Okay. And when I say lip service, they talk about eliminating waste in the process, or trying to put together some team to eliminate waste. But in reality, the biggest waste is people's time, energy, and talents. And when they forget or fail or neglect, or just simply, I'm better than them, I don't need their input, that's where we get into this denial. That's where we get into the blame game. That's where we get into not wanting to really open up to those people around you, because my gosh, they're the guy with the title on the door. They're the guy with the name on the door. why should they listen? Why should I take that from someone else? I've earned this. I'm in this office now. I've earned this. Well, real leaders, true leaders, will surround themselves with people better than them. And that's really where you open up to that vulnerability decision. I got to tell you that going through executive coaching or working with an executive coach is not for the weak. It really isn't. It's not for the timid. We have a passion. There's a lot of the guys, and Dirk
is scaring everybody off. They're already scared.
We have a passion to do this. And we know if we see what you're capable of, I'm not going to step back and say, oh, that's okay. Better luck next time. You'll get it next time. Here's an award. I'll give you an award today. Here's your gold star. That's not what it's about. It's about pushing you to be a better person. Once we know where you can be, and we know that you know where you can be, we're going to push you to that next level. It's not for the timid. It really isn't. And so make your mind up. Are you going to be successful or not? I'm not saying that that's the only way to be successful. I'm saying, are you ready? Are you ready for that next step? Or are you going to deceive yourself continually? And
it's good stuff. Dirk, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think Rich, you're absolutely spot on, and I apologize, I can't quite come up that quickly with the name of the journalist, but there was an article in Fast Company magazine a number of years ago that spoke about executive coaching, and maybe we can put the credit down in the comments below post edit, but the author said this at the end of that article. It said, executive coaching is not therapy. It's product development where you are the product. Yeah. And I found that to be a really profound statement because if you've ever been involved in manufacturing or in the development of a product, whatever that product may have been, whether that's a piece of software or a piece of machinery or a component or a piece or a part, there's a lot of work that goes into that and a lot of iteration. And sometimes you kind of have to scrap the idea and start all over again. And if you think about becoming the leader that you must be in that context, are you willing to put yourself into that process? Are you willing to say, yes, I am so committed to being the best leader that I can possibly be, that I'm willing to do that work. I'm willing to go through a product development process where I'm the product. That takes a tremendous amount of courage to do. And as Rich pointed out, it's not for the faint-hearted, but really the first evidence of that commitment to sense of duty, to a purpose larger than yourself, is the commitment to say, I'm going to work on me. I'm going to make me the best I can be so that I can then better serve those that follow me, right? And that takes a lot of courage, a lot of humility, and as John Mattone will often say, vulnerability, right? Vulnerability is probably the most courageous decision a leader can make.
Yep. So giving up this throne, you might say, of entitlement, right?
Yeah.
Giving up, the name on the door, the position, and all that stuff. Giving that up entitlement. Let's talk about some of the traits that you got to have in terms of being willing to do that. I'm going to kind of go back and forth. I'm going to take the first one here about honesty. If you will not be honest with yourself and with your executive coach, game over. And because it will always change from week to week. Well, now it's this story, now it's that story. And it's just being able to just sit yourself down, be still and say, okay, yeah, that's the way it is. Good, bad, ugly, indifferent, wonderful, whatever it is. You just got to be honest, right? And out of that honesty, what's the next point that we've got up there that we want to talk about, Dirk?
I think for me, the next point is commitment. That goes right along with that honesty is being committed to the process, being consistent, right? One of my favorite movies of all times, The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, right? If you're a weird sci-fi geek like me, you love that movie. And there's this wonderful character there of Dr. Emilio Lizardo. And one of his utterances is, character is what you are in the dark. Right. And if you think about that a little bit, it says, character is what you are in the dark. It means you're the same as when nobody sees you as you are in the daylight, right? And I think, secondary to honesty, the next outflow of honesty is commitment, is be that person at all times. Don't just be it when you're on the stage or in front of an audience or you have your team looking at you. You've really got to live those principles and live that commitment on a daily basis, and be that person even when no one else is watching. That's true altruism. That's a true sense of duty. Everything else, as you pointed out, Maikel, is really a false vanity, right? Is I can be altruistic in front of an audience, but really all that is ego and vanity, is because I'm trying to portray myself as being altruistic when I'm really just looking to signal. It's sort of virtual signaling, as we say in this day and age. So again, commitment, I think, is a big part of that, is being consistent and being committed to living that in all aspects, even when no one's watching.
What do you think of the notion of just being curious? Being willing to say, I don't know. Yeah. Being willing to say, I really don't get it all. I don't have it all. But seeing that there is some sort of disconnects, whether it's with me, other people in the C-suite, other people in my management, other people, there's something not going right. That ability to say, I got to go take a look at this. And then with that notion of, I don't know it all, being really curious. And as what you're talking about with commitment, once you got that commitment, you really got to take another stand of, I got to be courageous about this. If I know this, now that I understand it and I'm committed to doing it, doggone it, I've got to go do it. I got to have the courage to step out of my old ways, out of my old self, out of my old roles, and now go and do it in a different kind of a way. Yeah. And so this, I think, kind of leads to this sense of what we're talking about here, the sense of, I got to divest myself of this entitlement. I got to be honest about it. I got to be committed. I got to be curious about what the heck is really going on here, and then having the courage to go do that. Then that leads on. Let's have you talk about this, Rich, here. How does that then lend itself more easily to becoming more altruistic? Everybody, it's good for everybody.
Well, I don't want to know what I don't know. I think that's something outrageous. Curious. Why would I put myself out there to really find out where my weaknesses are?
Yeah.
That's a tough deal. And I think being curious, having that curiosity, it really comes with being courageous, being vulnerable, being willing to step outside that box and get all those, you might take a few hits, maybe some personal hits, maybe some hits to your pride. You might find out that what you thought all along wasn't actually the truth about certain things, that, there's a better way of doing things, a different way of doing things. So I think, that sense of altruism and bringing a team around you to build something bigger than yourself will help you learn. If you're open to learning, you need to be open to learning. You need to be open to that and learn from what these people have to teach you.
Yeah. And so as you take a look at this idea, and you kind of touched on what you just said there, if I'm going to be altruistic, I can play the game of the zero-sum game. It's, no matter where you go, it's really not going to grow. Or what John talks about, think bigger, think different. And that's when you engage that sense of, we're all working on this together, we've all got investments in this, then why not grow the pie, right? Let's grow the pie. Talk a little bit more about think bigger, think different. Rich, would you?
Well, I think a lot of that comes from Steve Jobs, and John was for a while was Steve Jobs' executive coach, and it really is about getting, having a mindset, a vision that you can do something more. As a leader, you're typically one that is up on looking out across the horizon, developing that vision, developing a mission and a core purpose for the organization. And you really have to disseminate that vision down to everybody and get them excited about it. Now think different. Come on, let's think different. Let's think big. I've got this vision. We can go here. And really getting everybody around you excited for that think different, think big. It's not only comes from an individual thing. I got to think different. I got to think bigger about myself. I got to think differently about my path. But it's also taking that vision and that internal ability and expanding that outwards, and grabbing everybody. Let's go. Let's get this done. Let's and then it's celebrating your successes with everybody. It's pretty lonely if you're sitting there eating your celebration cake by yourself. If there truly is one. But it's got to be when you're celebrating that with everybody around you. That's where you think different. That's where you're thinking bigger.
Good, excellent. Well, Dirk, you've got an anecdote here that's illustrative of everything we've been talking about. So I'm going to put you on that horse and you ride that out for us.
Yeah, and to build exactly on what Rich is saying is, I'm reminded of the story of Grayson's Bakery in Yonkers, New York. And Grayson's Bakery has been around for about 30 years, had pretty humble beginnings, but it built itself up and became pretty world famous. Grayson's cakes have been shipped all across the world. They've been served at the White House, at state dinners, etc. So it's become a pretty impressive bakery in its own right. And what's really interesting about Grayson's is they've always had this concept of giving back, right? So their profits have often gone to a lot of local and international charities. They've done a lot of good things and supported the community there. But what's really unique about Grayson's is that they have what's called an open hiring policy. And whenever they need to hire, they hire anyone, regardless of their skill, their background, whether they've got a criminal record, whether they've been bankrupt, whatever the case may be. If they need to hire someone, they hire anyone that needs a job at that moment. And it's really interesting. The CEO of Grayson's, Mike Brady, gave an interview a year or two ago, and he said something that I read in that interview in an article that really stuck with me. And he said, I don't hire people to make cakes. I make cakes so I can hire people. Man, that is different thinking, right? And I'm not suggesting that every business out there today can reach that level or is suitable to reach that kind of level. But that's what Rich is talking about when he says, have the courage to do something different, to think different. That's a CEO who has committed himself to an idea of duty, a sense of duty, a sense of altruism. And the results have come, right? He's been wildly successful. That bakery has been wildly successful. And they've had their cakes in front of the world's top leaders, right, who've enjoyed them. But all the while, with all that done with this greater sense of I want to give back, I want to make sure that people have an opportunity to do honest work for a good job. And and this is what we're really getting to about shifting from entitlement to duty. Is I don't make cakes, I don't hire people to make cakes. I make cakes so I can hire people. That's a tremendous mind shift difference, and I think gets to the heart of what we're talking about here today.
That's outstanding. All right.
Excellent.
So, somebody wants to get a hold of you, Dirk Van Der Vaart.
Yeah.
How do they do it? I mean, you're an impressive guy, a very impressive resume. They've got a chance to see how you think and how you work. What would they do to get a hold of you?
Simplest way is my name appears right below my giant head here on the screen, Dirk Van Der Vaart. It's just simply www.dirkvandervaart.com. You can go to that website and you'll see everything there is to know about me and my coaching practice. There's some videos on there where I introduce myself and some of these concepts in a little more depth. You can also go out on the web and look up Intelligent Leadership Executive Coaching, ILEC. And you'll find not just myself, but Rich and Maikel, you there as well. And you'll find a lot of information about many of the concepts we've talked about here today, as well as the 50 laws of intelligent leadership are there for your perusal. So again, dirkvandervaart.com or intelligentleadershipexecutivecoaching.com.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for being with us today. You've added a lot to what it is that we have to put out.
It's been a great privilege.
Yeah,
Love
it's been
it.
a lot of fun. Thank you so much. All right. You're taking it out, Rich. So take us out for the day.
All right. Once again, Dirk, thank you very much. Appreciate that. So if you have anything else you want to hear or have any comments or something else you may want to hear down the road on a different podcast, mainlineleadersact@gmail.com, mainlineleadersact@gmail.com, or richbarron.intelligentleadershipec.com. and great ways to find us. Reach out, talk to us. Let's sit down. Let's have a discussion. And once again, and subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and our channel and everything else. So once again, thank you. Take care. Have a great Memorial Day weekend, and we'll see you again soon.
Yes. All the best.
Yeah,
Happy Memorial.